Hey everyone, welcome back to Programming Fields. I'm Umesh Rana, and in this video, we will be enhancing our server-side data table with inline edit functionality using Laravel 11 and the Yajra DataTable package. This will allow us to edit records directly within the data table without navigating to a separate page. And in this playlist, we already did the project setup along with the server-side data table rendering using the Yajra DataTables package. Also, we saw the data table customization in which we added the columns for the action buttons, and we did data manipulation before rendering to the client side. If you will notice here to this created at date column, we have manipulated this data before rendering to this client side. Furthermore, we added the delete functionality here. So on successful delete, this will delete that record from this users table, and here this data table is refreshed without reloading this entire page. Okay. Now before we dive into the code, let's quickly review our current setup. So let's come to the code editor. And if I will show you the blade file, this is our users.blade file. Here we have the bootstrap CSS and data table CSS. Now we have this table header here, and we are rendering data from the server side. Now in the footer section, before closing of this HTML, we have the jQuery Shedian, bootstrap and the DataTable.js. And in the same blade file, we have added the custom script to initialize the data table, and we have added the server side processing, and for that we made this AJAX call from here. After that, we captured that AJAX response in order to map the columns so that these columns will be rendered out here in the front end. Okay. And lastly, we added this delete functionality here. So by clicking on that delete button, this will prompt first, and if we'll confirm, this will trigger the AJAX call again, and after this successful deletion, that table will be reloaded using AJAX. Okay. Now in order to handle the AJAX request, we have a controller as user controller. Inside this, we have the index function to render the data over the table. Here we have manipulated the data before rendering to the client side. Also, we added the action columns here. Inside the action columns, we have the edit and delete button. And for the edit, we have added route as users.edit, in which we are passing the user ID. And if we'll check out to the web.php, we have these three routes added here. This first route is to list out the users record over the table. Next, we have the edit route. So by clicking on edit button, this will trigger to this route, and this will call this edit function inside user controller. So if we'll come to the edit function here, we added this dump and die. And lastly, we have this destroy function in this controller. So when we'll perform the delete, this will find that user based on the given user ID. If that user exists, then this will delete that user, and this will return back with the success response. Now if you will come to the browser, if you will try to click on edit, yes, this is redirecting to that users.edit route, and in this is displaying the users record here. Now what we have to do, when we'll click on this edit, this will make this entire row editable till this phone number field here. Now when we'll click on this edit, this will convert these three TDs to editable. So we will have to add input fields here with these default values. So firstly, we will have to change this edit anchor link to the button, and we will have to pass the data attribute here. So let's come to the controller. Inside this listing, for this action button, this is for edit. Instead of hyperlink, I will change this to button, and here I will pass data ID attribute similar to delete. Okay. Now we will have to add the click event on this edit user. So let's come to the users blade again. And here after this delete functionality, I will add edit user functionality here. Now similar to delete, I will add same event delegation for performing this click event. So I will write table dot on click of edit user, that is our class name, and function. Okay, and here I will define one variable as const user ID, and I will fetch the user ID from this data attribute that we have passed here. Here we have the data ID attribute passed for this user ID. So we will capture that user ID here in this edit user click. So I will write $this dot data ID, and I will console that user ID. Let me refresh. Let me click on inspect. Inside this console tab, if we click on edit, yes, we are getting that user ID. If we'll check for other users, yes, we are getting that. Now we have to find the closest TD of that particular edit row. So let's suppose when we'll click on this edit, this will find all the TDs for this current row. Okay, so if we'll hover over on this column, here we have the TD added inside this tr. So for the name field, we have the 1 TD. Similarly, we have for the email and phone number. So let's add the functionality to find all the TDs for the current row. So let's come to the code editor, and here I will define one more variable as current row, and I will find the current row of that clicked edit user button. So I will write $this dot closest, and inside this I will find the tr. Okay, this is fine, and here I will add console.log current row. So I will check the current row data here. Let's refresh once again. Let's click on edit for this first row. Here we are getting that current row data. So we have 1 tr. Inside that we will have to find TDs. So here we have the cells array. Inside this we have the TD. So we will have to find all the TDs here. So for this I will create one function so that I will keep that editable functionality separately. So I will define one function as function make editable row. Alright, and I will call this function here, calling make editable row function. This function is for make editable row. Alright, now inside this function we will have to pass the current row just like this, and here we will capture that current row. Now here we will have to iterate the all TDs available inside this current row. So I will write current row dot find function. So this is jQuery find function here, and inside this I will find the TD element. Okay, thereafter I will iterate those all TD. So I will use jQuery each function just like this. Inside this each function I will pass one parameter to capture the index. So I will add index parameter here. Now inside this I will add console.log index, and I will comment this current row console. Let me come to the browser. Let's refresh. Let's click on edit. So here in the console we are getting total 6 TDs here, that means 0 to 5 index. So the index is starting from 0 here. 0 for this first column is serial number, and further this is for 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Now we will have to specify the editable row. That means for every TD we don't want to edit. For the first serial number we don't have to give the edit option here, and also for the created at and the action buttons only we needed to edit name, email and phone number fields. So for that we will have to specify the editable fields. That means for the name field, we have the editable column index as 1, 2 for email and 3 for phone number. Okay. So what I will do, I will define one variable just like at this top, const editable columns, and here I will specify one array. Inside this array, I will define the index. For that we want to make editable row. So we will have to pass the index as 1, 2 and 3, because the 1 is specifying for the name, 2 index will be for email and 3 index will be for phone number. So let's add it. I will pass index in comma separated of this array. Alright. Now we can use this array here inside this for each function. So I will add one if condition, if editable columns dot includes current index, because this will iterate all the td index here in this loop. So for the first index, that means for the 0 index, we don't need the editable column. Alright, so it will skip that. After that it will check the next index. So for the 1 index, from here this will check if that current index is 1, then this will come inside this if condition. And here we have to make one input field and we have to append that in the current cell. So I will define one more variable as const cell, and here this will be current cell. I will write current cell. Okay. Inside if condition, we have to check if the index is matching for the editable, then I have to append input element in the current cell. So I will write current cell dot html, and inside this I will use backtick just like this, and here I will add input type is equals text. Next I will pass class as form control, and also I will pass one more additional class so that we will identify this row is for editable. So I will add editable input. Okay, and here we will have to populate the current value that is populating over the td here. Let's suppose if it is for name, then when we will click on edit, we will have one input field here, and on that input field the current field value should be populated over there. So for the first td, this td will be converted to input field, and on that input field we will have to populate this name. So we will have to get the current text here. So let's add in this value, we will have to populate the current text. So we will find the current text from this current cell. So I will define one more variable as const current text equals, and this will fetched from the current cell dot text function, and I will trim that text so that the empty spaces will be removed. Now I will pass this current text in this value field. So I will use string interpolation just like this. This is fine. Okay, let's come to the browser. Let me refresh. Let's try to click on edit button here. Yes, when we clicked on edit, we can see here the td has been changed to input type text, and on that input the current value has been populated as a value. If we take the pointer to this input, inside this td we have input type text, we have the classes added here, and we have the value populated. Same thing for this email and phone number. So this is fine. Now we have to change this edit button as update. So we will have to append one button here, so that when we will click on that update button, the updated value should be saved into the database using the AJAX request. So we will have to append one button here in the last column. So I will come to the code editor. Here after this loop, I will find the current row last index. So I will write current row find td of last, okay, and inside that we have to append buttons. So again I will use backtick here, okay. So we have to add button as I will pass class as btn primary btn sm, and I will add text as update, okay. Also we have to pass the current user id, that means current row index primary id, so that when we'll click on that update button, it should update that particular user data. So we have already fetched this user id here, so I can use this user id. So we will be needing this user id here in order to update that particular user data. So what we will have to do, either we will have to pass the user id here in this function and we will have to pass it here, or else we can write this line directly here in the above function. So simply I will write this line in the above function here. Just after this, here we can use that user id. So I will write data id is equals to user id. This is for update button. Also we will have to add one more button for that delete, because we are completely removing that HTML element and we are creating that it again. So for the delete, we will have to pass the same button here as we passed from the controller. So I will copy it from controller. I will come to the blade file. Here I will add it, and inside the data id attribute, we will have to pass the user id just like this, okay, and this text will be delete, and we have the delete user class. So this is fine, okay. Let's remove this current row here. Here we are appending action buttons in the last column, okay. Let's come to the browser, let's refresh, let's try to click on edit. Yes, so on edit we can see that button is changed now to update, and we have the delete button as well. If we'll hover over on this update button, we have the data id attribute, and in this we have the current user id. Similarly for this delete, we have the data id attribute for that current user. So when we will perform that delete, this will delete that particular user id data. This is fine. Now here if we will try to click on next row edit, let's suppose for the second user, if I want to make editable, then we can see this row is also editable here for this current user data. But what I want, at a time only one row will be editable, and on click on update, only that user data will be updating. So what we will have to do, we will have to check if any row is already editable, then we will have to make it false. That means we will have to reset the all TDs for that particular row in the normal TD, that is for display view only. So we will have to add one condition in order to reset the editable fields. This will check when we will click on this first edit button, only this current row is editable, and when we will click on the second row edit, the first row editable should be reset and the current row will be editable. So in that case, we have to set the current row editable. So this will make the only one row editable at a time. So let's implement that. Let's come to the code editor. Here I will define one variable as let editable row, and by default I will set this to null. And when we'll click on current row edit user, that will make that particular row to editable row. So we will have to assign this current row to this editable row variable. So after this make editable row function, I will assign the current row to the editable row. So I will write editable row is equals to current row. Here we are updating the current row to editable, and here before making that particular row to editable, we will have to add one if condition, and here I will check if editable row, or better we can change this to current editable row, that will be more meaningful here. If current editable row is not empty, and if current editable row not equals to current row, then we will have to reset the current row editable. Okay, so this will check if current row is editable, then this will reset the other row editable. Okay, and here we will have to add the functionality to reset the editable row to the normal row. So for that, again I will call a function. So I will define one function, let's suppose reset editable row. Okay, and we will have to pass the current editable row. So let's define this function here after this function reset current row editable. So I will define function as reset editable row, and we will have to capture that function parameter. So I will add current editable row, and again we will have to find all the TDs available inside the current editable row. So I will write current editable row dot find all TD dot each function. Okay, again we will have to pass the index. So we will have to reset only those rows for which we have added the input field similar to this. Alright, so again we will have to add if condition. If editable columns, that means we already defined one array of editable columns and we have passed the index for which we want to edit. So we will have to check if editable columns dot includes the current index. Okay, then again we will have to append the normal text on the current cell. So here we will have to get the current cell similar to this one. So let's copy these two lines here and let's paste it. Inside this if condition, we will have to append to the current cell dot html function. Again I will use backtick, and inside this HTML we will have to append the input values. That means this will be the updated values through this input field. Okay, so here we will have to find the input element of that particular cell. So let's add. So I will remove this line, this is not needed, and I will add it here. And instead of this dot text, I will use find function, and inside this find I will find the input element and that input element value. So I will use dot val function. Okay, and this will be current value, and I will append this current value inside this current cell dot html. So I will be using dollar curly braces just like this. Okay, so this will reset that row from editable and this will convert that to the normal row. So this is fine. Let's come to the browser. Let's refresh. Let me try to click on the first row, edit. Yes, this is editable now. Now let's try to click on the second row, edit. Yes, so when we clicked on the second row, edit, the first row editable option has been reset and the editable option is enabled for the second row only. Similarly, if we click on third row, edit, the second row editable has reset and it enabled for the third row only. But here we will have to reset the button to the normal edit again. Okay, so let's update this as well. So let's come to the code editor. Here after this loop, we will have to append the button in the last row again. So again we will use current editable row dot find td last, and we will have to add HTML function again. Inside this HTML, we will have to append the buttons as edit and delete. So I will copy it from this button here and I will paste it here inside this function. And here we will have to find the user ID. So here we will find that user ID from the update button, because on edit the current active button will be update. So if we'll come to the browser, if we'll refresh, if we'll try to click on edit here, on edit we have the update button here. So if we'll hover over on this update button, we are having this data ID as user ID 3. Okay, so we will have to find this data ID attribute from this button, and for this I will add one more class as update btn. So let's scroll up. This is our update button here. I will add one more class as btn update. This is fine. Now let's copy this class name, scroll down, and here I will add one variable as const user ID, and this I will find it from current editable row dot find. Inside this I will pass that class name as btn update, and then I will fetch data ID. Okay, this is fine. Let's save, and let's change this button text to edit again. This class will be btn success, and also we will have to pass the additional class as btn edit. This is fine. Let's refresh now. Now let's try to click on first edit button. Yes, on first edit we have the editable row. Now if we'll click on second edit, the first row edit has reset and it is enabled for the second row only. Now if we'll hover over on the button, we have the button class as btn success, btn sm and btn edit, and we have the data ID attribute as 3 that we have set it. Same thing for this delete button, we have the ID as 3. Now in the current row, for this update button, we have the data ID attribute as 4, and for this delete as well. Alright, so this is fine. Now we will have to implement the update functionality using AJAX. So after updating the records, this will save to the users table, and here this should reflect the updated data. Alright, so we already added the class on this update button as btn update. So we can use this class to perform the AJAX call. So after this function, I will add update function here. So again I will use $table dot on click of btn update, and next we will have to write function. Okay, inside this again we will have to find the current data attribute of that ID. So I will use user ID, because on update we have to update only that user for which we are having that user ID. So I will find $this dot data ID. Okay, this is our user ID. Now again we will have to find the closest tr of that update button, so that it will pass the current row data for update. So let's suppose if we click on this update button, we have to pass the current row data for the update in the AJAX call. So we will have to find these data here for the closest row. So I will use const current row again, and I will use $this dot closest tr. Next again we will have to iterate this. So I will write current row dot find td dot each function, just like this. Now next we will have to check if the current index is editable column. So we already defined that array, this one, okay. So we will have to add that if condition similar to this. So let's copy and let's add it here. If the editable columns dot includes the current index, then we will have to find the input value. So we will define one variable as const input value is equals to, and that we have to find it from the current td. So that we will write $this dot find input dot val function, okay. Now we will add condition if index is equals 1, then I will form one data object. So I will define one variable as const updated user data, and I will initialize it through empty object. Now I will have to assign this to updated user data. So if index is equals to 1, that means if it is name input field, then I will assign updated user data dot name is equals to current input value, just like this. Same thing, if the current index is equals to 2, then we will have to assign the current value to the email field, just like this, okay. And lastly we have phone number field. So if index is 3, then I will write phone number, and this will be assigned from the current input, okay. This is fine. Now after this we will have to perform the AJAX call so that we can update user data. So we will write $.ajax function. Inside this we will have to define the URL. So let's define URL as, here I can use route function. So I will define route as users.update. We will have to define the type. So I will define put method here. Next we have to define the data attribute as, firstly we will have to pass the ID. So we are getting that user ID from here, okay, on current update button. So that we have to pass it as user ID. Next we will have to pass the name, and for the name we will get it from updated user data dot name. So currently we are assigning this name, email and phone number based on the td iteration. So we will fetch it from here. So let's copy this and let's paste it here. Next we have email field, and that we will fetch it from updated user data dot email. So I will change this to phone underscore number, because in the database we have the column as phone underscore number, and here we will have to assign it from updated user data dot phone number, okay. This is done. Now we will have to capture this success response. So on success function we will capture the response from the server, and also we will capture the error function. So here we will capture the error response. This is done, okay. Now before making this AJAX call, I will add console.log so that we will have data. So I will add update user data, and I will add return, okay. Let me refresh, and this is throwing users.update route is not defined. So we will have to define that route first here. So I will add route : put method, and here the endpoint will be users/update, and the function will be update. Let's define the route name as users.update. Let's copy this function. Let's define it inside the user controller here. So after this destroy function, I will define function as update. Let me add this annotation. This function is update, and in the parameter we will capture the object as request. Okay, and let me add dump and die $request all. This is fine. Inside this users blade, for this AJAX call, we will have to pass the CSRF token because we are using put method here. So let me pass one more field here as a token. So we will pass underscore token, and that I will fetch it from Laravel helper function as CSRF token. This is done. Now let's come to the browser. Let's refresh. Now let's try to click on first row edit button. Now let's try to update something, and let's try to click on update button here. Let's check the console. Yes, we are getting that data here. If we'll update something in the email field, if we'll click on update, yes, we are getting that updated data. Now we will have to enable the AJAX call. So let's remove this console and return statement, and here we will perform this AJAX call. Now let's refresh. Now let's try to click on edit again. Let's update something. Let's click on update now. Yes, that AJAX request has been triggered, and if we'll check in the network, yeah, we are getting that request object. So let's perform the update functionality here. In the user controller, we will write try catch exception. Let's import this exception class. Inside this try block, I will use user find function, and I will assign this to a variable as $user. Inside this, I will pass request ID that we are getting from this request object. I will use find or fail function. Now I will add one if condition. If we have $user, then I will update the user fields just like name, and this I will update it from request object name field. Okay, so I will write request name. Same thing for email, and lastly we have the phone number field that we are getting from this phone number. Okay, and here I will use eloquent save function, and lastly we will have to return the response in the JSON format. So I will write return response JSON, and inside this array I will add status as success, message as user updated successfully. For the else part, if user data does not exist, then I will add message as error, unable to find user. Okay, and for the exception, I will copy and paste the same response JSON, and here I will change the message as unable to update user, and I will concat exception message here. Okay, this is fine. Now let's come to the users blade. Here we will have to capture the success response. So I will add if response dot status is equals to success. Okay, then we will have to update the updated data in the users table. So for this, simply we can reload the table using AJAX. So if you scroll up, for the delete, we already reloaded that table here. Okay, so let's copy and paste it here, else it will throw error, and that I will capture from response.message. For the error, I will add same alert here, and this will captured from error response.message. This is fine. Let's come to the browser. Let's refresh. Let me close this developer console. Now let me try to click on edit. I will update something. I will click on update. Yes, this is updated, and here you can see this updated data has been populated here. Similarly, if you try to click on edit for the second row, okay, and here instead of second row, I will update the third row data just like this. I will update the email. Okay, let me click on update. Yes, this is updated now. Great. In this video, we have successfully added inline editing to our data table. We worked through setting up the edit button, creating the inline form, and implementing the update functionality. And that's it for this tutorial. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more Laravel tutorials. Also, let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I will be happy to help you. Now in the next video, we will dive deeper into the data table functionality and implement the row reorderable and column reorderable functionalities. So stay tuned with Programming Fields, and thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video. Until then, happy coding.